Hello, we are so excited that you are joining us today. We have an extremely amazing guest this afternoon. But first of all, my name is Allison Haney, and I am your holistic nutritionist. And joining me today is my awesome sidekick.
Hi, I'm Julietta, the magical PT, and we want to welcome you all to the Voices of the Goddess podcast, where we interview other goddesses to share their tips on how they are who they are and do what they do. And hopefully, these tips will help you be the goddess that you are meant to be. So, yes, I am super excited to have my friend Mary Lomando on today. So, welcome to our show. And please tell our guest who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you so much, Julietta and Allison. And Julietta and I, when I was thinking about it earlier, we've known each other probably over 15 years. So I'm explaining myself to you, who you know me really well, and Allison, and to anyone who's listening. I'm an astrologer. I've been an astrologer for maybe 30 years, and that's originally how I met Julietta. And I also do counseling. I do past regression, past life regressions, hypnosis regressions. And of all things, I'm an Egyptologist. And people say, well, what is that, Mary? What's an Egyptologist? And it's actually someone who studied ancient Egypt, particularly the religion, the archaeological aspects, the history. And now I take people, probably for the past 20 years or so, to spiritual journeys to Egypt and also Peru. My husband is from Peru, so we do those trips together. Basically, I am very much at home with, I would say, probably any kind of spiritual development or working with midwifing in terms of the idea of where we want to go with our process. Some people were starting from the beginning, and with others, we're starting midway. Other people are pretty well versed in metaphysical and spiritual topics and or their life path, and so they just want a little bit of coaching. So it's kind of like spiritual coaching with astrology, tarot, lots of things thrown into the mix here.
Super cool stuff. All right. So without further ado, we get to dive into our questions. And the first question is, Mary, what is your superpower, or if you could choose one, what would it be?
Well, I would say basically my superpower is my intuition. It's something that I pretty much always knew that I had. I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to pan out. You know, when you're a kid, you kind of just know things, but you're never sure why you know them. And sometimes you're told to keep quiet and really not tell people what you know. But actually, as I got older and got much more interested in psychology and astrology, especially, I realized that that was a true gift. And that's something that I'm extremely grateful for. And my life has been blessed because of that intuition.
And I think, speaking to your, I can relate back to years ago when a lot of us tried to hide those gifts because they were, people looked at us that we were weird or we shouldn't do that. And I do feel that in more recent years that it is becoming much more acceptable, and it's much easier to be out in the open about being intuitive and tuned into other dimensions and other realities. So do you agree?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I remember when I was first studying astrology way back in New York, back in the early 1980s, it was kind of you go into a bookstore and there'd be lots of, beautiful things to look at and new books and things. But astrology was like, it was just coming into its own. And when I later went to Egypt, there were you couldn't find a New Age store. They didn't exist in Egypt. And so I remember thinking, well, someday I'm just going to be able to go anywhere and find astrology. And, 30 years later, that's exactly what it is. There's an astrologer, or you can buy astrology books anywhere, Amazon, anywhere you go now. It's mainstream, and not just astrology, but channeling, metaphysical, teachers, everyone, the new age, the age of Aquarius, is all about how to bring these ancient, let's call them ancient knowledge, wisdom, all of that into the everyday place. That's what we're doing now. And so, yes, I agree totally that now is something, we don't realize how lucky we are in a way, because for so many years, so much of this was held back. And I'm old enough to remember when you couldn't really talk openly about some of these things. It wasn't just because your family, or your immediate friends poo-pooed it. It was more like it just was taboo. You couldn't talk about it.
And years ago, they used to burn the witches at the stake for stuff like that.
Well, right. And
you died for it.
Right. We go back into our, lineage and our different histories, especially women that I call wise women. Now, all women are smart. All women are intelligent. I'm a proponent of, women are very much I want to say the superior race, but we're very much more than we've been billed in the past. When we look at some of the lineages having to do with wise women, whether they were healers, whether they were seers or oracles, it's always been, held down. It's always been persecuted, and it's always been a taboo subject to be a wise woman. And now we're out in the open, and we're in Egypt as the goddess work, and teaching about the different goddesses and how they are archetypally relevant for us today as modern women. Because a lot of people say, well, Mary, what's all this stuff with the past? Why is that interesting? Well, when we realize that we all operate, especially as Carl Jung said, on this idea of archetypal psychology, we all understand that sometimes things like the shadow can pop up. We've got different, we talk about our inner masculine and feminine nowadays. That's all about the animus and anima. So we have inner archetypal beings inside of us, and how we work with that and resolve certain issues is the lifelong path that we're all on.
I find it all so fascinating. And I have to tell you guys that you're talking about that. My mother, when I was middle school, so I would have been 13 or 14, which is a really long time ago. My mother did her past life regression. And at that time, we didn't talk about it. Like, I knew she was doing it. She told me and my sister she was doing it, but we certainly did not talk about it. Like, I didn't tell friends. They would have thought my mom was, I hate to say it, but they thought she was crazy for doing that stuff. But I've always found that so fascinating.
It is fascinating. And again, as we move more into what, popular culture and not just astrologers anymore talk about the new age, the age of Aquarius, what does that mean? And it actually means Aquarius is an air sign. It's all about the mind. It's all about communication and knowledge. So we're coming into a new age of knowledge and understanding that on a perceptual, intuitive level, which means, yes, you can open up psychically and not be persecuted for it, which is a beautiful thing. I love that.
Awesome. So let's jump on to our next question, which is, what is a book that has greatly influenced your life?
Well, as an avid reader from the age of 7, there's so many hundreds of books probably that have influenced me. But I would say probably to pick out one that was a mainstay that to this day I still go back to is Carl Jung's Memory, Dreams, and Reflections. Because when I was first studying psychology, it was kind of dry, back then. And, it was just all about, biological stuff in the body and and it was not holistic the way it is nowadays. And someone suggested that I read Carl Jung, and in Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, it just wowed me, because here was a man who was very, very respected as an analyst, started his own school of analytical Jungian astrology, but he was also a traveler. He was a world traveler, and this man loved adventure, and he had a great sense of humor. And I thought, yeah, that's the kind of psychologist and therapist I want to be. And so he became kind of, a mentor for me. He wasn't alive anymore, of course, but I felt very guided by Carl Jung earlier on. And then there is another book by a Jungian analyst, a woman named Jean Shinoda Bolin. And she wrote a book, I believe it was in the 80s, about the goddesses in every woman. Now, since then, she's written The Goddesses in Every Man, and she's written many books. But that first one that archetypal connection between being a modern woman, working with our psychology, and seeing how these ancient archetypes resonated in our psyche. And she talked a lot about Athena and Demeter and all of the Greek goddesses. It was based on the Greek pantheon. And that gave me sort of an idea that later on blossomed when I first went to Egypt and studied the Egyptian lineage, that there are Egyptian goddesses that also resonate within us. Isis, Hathor, Sekhmet, all of them are healers and all of them are magical and wise. And so being an astrologer, being an Egyptologist, and also being a therapist, it's sort of blended together. And so basically what I teach now in my older crone years, if you will, is the synthesis of how these things blend within us, the archetypes, the psychology, especially Jungian psychology, and astrology, and definitely working with this idea of past life regressions and going into hypnosis if we feel particularly stuck about certain themes in our life that we can't really seem to crack no matter what goes on. So that was 2 books, but like I said, the thousands behind them.
We'll allow 2, and
I know my mind is just going like, whoa, wow, yes, oh my gosh.
No, and I knew we could count on Mary to bring in like a completely new and different perspective than I think, most of the books that have been brought up in our past episodes before, most people have heard of and have maybe not read them all, but at least know of their existence. And I'm pretty sure the books today, people would be like, I never heard of that book. I'm going to check it out. So bringing something completely new and fresh to the table. So we appreciate that, Mary.
Well, you're so welcome. And of course, because this is Mary, the teacher of books, if anyone wants a book list of a few interesting titles that cover this, it's kind of like this segue between astrology, psychology, and the ancient lineages, please contact me. I mean, I love giving out book lists.
Actually, we can probably get that and then we'll share it in the, we put everything in the comments and in the show notes and stuff like that. So yeah, we can definitely share that information for everyone. Sure. So next question, super important. What is your favorite self-care practice?
When I wake up every morning, I do 2 things. One is I'm lucky. I live in South Florida. So as Julietta knows, I can open my sliding glass doors and look at the trees and the pond in my backyard. And I meditate. I just pull up a chair into the backyard and I sit there and I meditate probably for about 10, 15 minutes. And then that gives me the strength to move into the rest of the day, which usually is really busy, either on phone, telephone, video conferencing, computer. The rest of the day is pretty much like a technological mirage, if you will. But that beginning meditation is excellent. And I know some people, if you can't meditate, perhaps you want to go for a walk or you just want to open the window and get some fresh air. But for me, I couldn't start the day unless I had that 5-minute meditation. And I used to have a lot more time in the morning. So I would pull cards as well. I'd pull like an angel card or a tarot card or a goddess card, something to give me a message for the day. And then that would just set me off. Believe it or not, during the whole year of COVID, I ended up having less time than I ever did before. But I would say meditation practice first thing in the morning is my go-to.
And because I've been to Mary's, I know this tree that she's talking about. And like all trees are magical, but she has like an extra special magical tree in her backyard. And it kind of makes me think of, for those, some of you know, also I'm a huge Avatar and Blue People fan, but the tree in her backyard kind of reminds me of the tree from the Avatar movie. I mean, it doesn't glow in the same way it did in the movie, but it has that kind of energetic feel to it.
Yes, thank you, Juliet. It does. And last night, and the night before with the full moon, it's really funny when the moon is right over that tree in the pond. There is a magical glow, and I call it the wishing tree. And so a lot of times I'll just go out there and just touch the bark and put an intention there, and it really, it really is magical. And I do a lot of Buddhist meditation and classes, and I know that the Buddhists do prayer flags, and the next chance I get, I want to get some prayer flags and put them up on that tree. Maybe my birthday, I'm just going to string it with flags.
Nice. That's a great idea. All right. Next question is, how do you create accountability in your life?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think about it every day, and every time I work with a client, I have to check in with myself, and I have to be really sure on the accountability level that I'm working. I do a little meditation before I talk to the person and ask for their highest guides to work with my guides, so that we can bring forth the information and or the process that is best to facilitate them at this point in time. So I always have to kind of keep my ego aside. It's not about me pontificating and telling people things that they never heard before, or like the Wizard of Oz. It's more like, how can I best be of service in that moment? And I think anyone who's a healer, who does any kind of healing, does that. It's an automatic process. I don't kind of check in with myself and say, gee, am I being like authentic and am I total integrity right now? I just call on my guides and ask them to just work through me, and that's pretty much how I do it. Accountability comes from the highest levels down, in my world anyway.
I was going to say, and I knew that we could count on Mary from taking this question to a whole different level, because accountability can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. And I think in our past episodes, it's been looking at accountability more from like, how do I make sure I get done all of the things that I need to get done? But yeah, there is, being accountable to our higher selves, being accountable to what's best for our clients. And, those of us in those kinds of industries, every time a client comes in, like, it is about putting the ego aside and putting that person that you're serving as the priority for the moment, and what's going to be of most service to them. Exactly. And now, like, saying that out loud, just thinking, like, pretty much for every profession out there, like, you can look at it like, how do I serve and how do I put the greater good as the priority out there? And how do I take my ego out of the way instead of looking at, what do I feel like doing? What do I want doing? How do I get the most out of this? How can I serve in what I'm doing? And how can I create the highest good of the world out there?
Well, exactly. And most of us, don't think that we don't think that we're on a path of service. But, it's like when you do yoga. Sometimes you just do yoga because, you want to lose weight, or you want to breathe better, or you just want to feel more flexible, which is great. But when you really think about doing something like yoga, you're bringing in a whole lineage behind you. And whoever instituted the practice of yoga way back in ancient times, that there's an energy that comes through with that. So you can use yoga in many different ways. Now, quite honestly, I didn't even think of accountability in any other way except how I answered the question. But this idea of, if you do everything, even if you go to a job that you don't like every day, just because you need to do it, if you kind of think of it like, this is my yoga practice, this is my service, and no matter what I do today, I'm just going to do it in complete compliance with the universe. It's like, if I'm nice to people, then that's a plus. If I'm kind of nasty, well, that's a minus. And guess what? The universe keeps track. So I would say to be accountable to yourself is basically, like the Dalai Lama said, just be a nice person. You can't go wrong.
No, Allison was just signaling the mind-blowing symbol, not realizing that this is going to be on podcast and they can't hear your mind-blown symbol. But yeah, this is definitely, taking accountability to a whole new level here today.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that there's something new that I can bring to the table. You never know, right?
I knew you were a little nervous coming on here, but and I say this to anyone who's going to be our guest, what needs to come through is going to come through in the show. And, it's just about us three ladies getting together and talking and sharing our gifts, because every single person out there has gifts to share. And you might not always realize that you do, but it's inside there, and just talking and asking questions, things come out, important information comes out. And so I knew you would have some great things for us today, Mary. And I do really love this, a different way of looking at accountability. So.
Well, me too, because I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. So,
well, and this question actually came from, we interviewed our potential listeners before we created the show. And that was the one question that came up over and over again, was people were looking for support in ways to create accountability in their life. And I think in this busy world, it's how do I stay committed to my goals? How do I get things done? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it has been about, keeping a calendar, writing everything down, getting an accountability partner. But, bottom line, when it comes down to it, if we are connected to our highest good and the highest good of of everyone else, it's accountability on a whole different level. Mm-hmm. that's going to come forth. So that's right. Beautiful.
And I totally get it that some people, because there's so much that let's call it so much clutter in everyday 3D reality. It's like it's like cleaning out your closet. Where do you start? When that clutter starts to infiltrate and you kind of get trapped by it, you do, I like that idea of having an accountability partner, or you go ask someone else who has some sort of leverage there to help you get through the clutter or to move it or take care of it. And I think that's, basically that's my job, if you will, professionally, is that I help people remove the clutter from their viewpoint, so that they can see clearly where they want to go and sometimes what the best way for them to implement those strategies. And so I think yes, you're right. There's different levels and different ways to even view that accountability. So if anybody needs any help removing the clutter, just let me know.
Allison's got her hand up. Me.
That would be me.
Wow. Oh, man. Stuff to think about, right?
Mm-hmm. And and it's funny because I like the question about the superpower. I thought, oh, wow, I never thought of that before. But yeah, I guess we all have one, don't we? We just have to zero in on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of it is acknowledging. I think that too often, we don't give ourselves enough credit, enough self-appreciation, and we all do have superpowers. And taking a moment to focus in on what are they, and then that allows us to use them at another level. And you bringing up intuition, all of us have the ability to have intuition. It just comes easier for some more than others, but it's definitely something that everybody has. You just get to tap into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think about that too. Also, for moms, being a mom, you have to tap into superpowers you don't even know that you had just to be a mother. And so I think, again, it's such an individual thing. And one of the things that's interesting about astrology is, just to mention that quickly, is that when people are born, we all have really incredible gifts, and we also have challenges that we need to overcome. And one of the things about astrology is it can help you uncover those superpowers if they've been latent or you don't even know that you've had them. It's kind of like, how do we uncover the gold there that's been buried under all the lead? It's really a beautiful process to go through that with someone.
Absolutely. All right. We're kind of running out of, you're muted, Allison.
Do that all the time because I'm trying to spare you guys from the dogs in the background, but I could sit here and have a conversation with Mary all afternoon.
Well,
sometimes I do.
Oh my gosh.
But we are running out of time, ladies.
Yes.
So it's time for us to do our takeaways. You want to do your takeaway, Allison?
Yes. My takeaway is, first of all, I need to get together with Mary outside of this, first and foremost. But secondly, I love the accountability that she mentioned about the service that we bring to others. And I love how you said it about compliance to the universe. If you're nice, you get back nice. If you're not, you don't. And it's so true. And I think that is truly where we hold ourselves accountable is no matter what you do in life, you are serving the humans around you, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're working out in a field or you're running a corporate office. It doesn't matter. You're serving all those people that you are surrounded by every day. And gosh, if everyone would just look at it that way and have that goal when they're interacting with people, what a difference we would have and how people treated one another. And it would just affect so many things. So for bringing that perspective, it's incredible.
My takeaway is Mary talking about Carl Jung and books. I have Carl Jung books on my bookshelf that I have not read yet. So it's time to take them off the bookshelf and get them read. That's my takeaway for today.
And really, the one book to read is Memory, Dreams, and Reflections. It's his autobiography. He wrote this looking back on his life, and it's brilliant because he talks about traveling all over the world and going to Egypt, and it's real because a lot of the actual psychological book writings in the books, they're very dry. I mean, they're textbooks really, but that one, his life story is incredible.
What's your takeaway for today, Mary?
Well, my takeaway is being able to be here with you two wonderful, brilliant women and really feeling that this is so natural. I feel like we're all sitting in my living room here and, just chatting away and, or sitting out under the tree, just chatting away. And that's what I love. I mean, Julietta knows I sure love to talk. So this idea of it being a community really appeals to me. So I love that. Thank you. That's my takeaway. I'm happy. Yay.
Nice. I'll hang out and chat any day.
Yay. So, and speaking of that, I think now is an okay time for me to mention that, Mary talked about taking groups to Egypt for tours, and Mary and I are working together to put together an extra special journey to Egypt this November. And we'll put some links in the comments and in the show notes for the podcast if you'd like to join us on that. And we also have a Facebook group for everybody that's interested in taking that trip where, we disperse a lot of information there. And we also are there providing spiritual support for people to have, the most amazing journey that they can have on this trip to Egypt. So if anyone's interested in joining us, we can definitely get you more information on that. But we are running out of time, so it's time to wrap this up. And I just want to say thank you so much to Mary for joining us this afternoon and bringing us a whole new perspective. And I want to say thank you to our audience for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this show, please subscribe either on YouTube, iTunes, follow us on social media, share it with your friends, like us, comment, give us reviews. All of that helps support us and keep us moving this goddess support forward. So thank you all again, and have a magical day.
Thank you,
Thank
lady.
you, Mary.
Bye-bye.